Ledger Line, Book 1 of the Ledger City series by Darius Blackman for the Darius Blackman Publishing YouTube channel. Welcome to Darius Blackman Publishing. My name is Brian Frazier, and I write under the pen name Darius Blackman. Today, I want to take you inside Ledger Line, Book 1 of the Ledger City series. This is a story about grief, corruption, money, power, love, family, and the way respectable institutions can hide ugly crimes behind polished language. It begins with one man sitting alone in his car outside a church. His name is Micah Mercer. Rain is tapping against the windshield. A thick manila envelope rests on the passenger seat. Inside are deeds, financial records, donation reports, property files, and enough evidence to prove that something deeply wrong is happening inside the city. Micah presses record and says, "If you're hearing this, don't let them call it an accident." That sentence opens the door to the entire world of Ledgerline. Micah knows he is being followed. He knows the people he has been investigating are powerful. He knows that the language they use in public does not match what they are purchasing in private. And before the night ends, he leaves one final instruction. Do not look at what they preached, look at what they purchased. That is the heartbeat of this book. Because Ledger Line is about what happens when faith, politics, philanthropy, development, and finance begin speaking the same language while serving a completely different purpose. It asks a simple but dangerous question. What if the people promising to rebuild a neighborhood are actually buying its destruction in advance? The death that brings Javon home. Micah Mercer dies in what the city quickly treats as an accident. His older brother, Javon Mercer, comes home for the funeral. Javon is controlled, disciplined, financially trained, and successful. He has built a life in Washington, D.C., far away from the neighborhood, the family expectations, and the responsibilities he believed would consume him if he stayed. At the cemetery, everyone around him gives grief a visible shape. His mother sways. Friends cover their faces. Church women cry. Javon does not. The manuscript says that control became his real talent, not the mathematics, not the career. Control. Control built the life other people called success because they did not understand what he had paid for it. That detail matters because Javon's entire journey is about learning the difference between discipline and distance. He believes he is the responsible brother, the rational brother, the one who does not move before the facts are clean. But Micah's death forces him to confront the cost of waiting for perfect proof while real people are already being harmed. The investigation begins at Micah's repast inside New Mercy Baptist Church. There is a memorial sign, a donation ledger, corporate names mixed among personal gifts, and one strangely precise number, $4,875. The same amount appears more than once. Beside it is a notation, 14-B. Javon notices what grief and kindness have caused everyone else to overlook. The donation amounts do not look like donations. They look like transactions. They are too specific, too repeated, too clean. That is Javon's gift. He sees motive inside mathematics. But the moment he begins asking questions, Bishop Amos Calhoun steps in. The bishop is polished, respected, wealthy looking, and practiced in the kind of public warmth that can shut down uncomfortable questions without ever raising its voice. When Javon asks about the numbers, the bishop tells him that grief can make a man reach for control. Javon answers, I understand accounting can make a man allergic to sloppy paperwork. That exchange establishes the battle lines. On one side is a man trying to read the numbers. On the other is an institution trying to make questioning look inappropriate. Selacade and the second copy, Javon, is not investigating alone. Selacade is a reporter, podcast host, and the woman he once loved. She is sharp, independent, fearless, and unwilling to let procedure become an excuse for inaction. Micah contacted her the night he died. He trusted Javon's mind. He trusted Selah's willingness to move. When she plays Micah's final recording, Javon hears his brother explain the meaning of the numbers. Parcel 14, B, a tax redemption amount of exactly $4,875. A shell company called CBR Holdings, a church-backed housing initiative that appears charitable on the surface but is tied to property acquisition underneath. Micah says, they changed the names, not the math. That line defines Javon's role in the story. Names can change, companies can change, public language can change, but numbers leave patterns. Micah also tells them, don't go to them soft, don't go to them separate. That command brings Javon and Selah back together. Their relationship is not treated as a simple romantic subplot. It is woven directly into the investigation. They once loved each other, but Javon left. He chose distance, career, and control. Selah stayed and built a life around asking questions powerful people wanted buried. Their old conflict returns immediately. Javon believes Selah moves too quickly. Selah believes Javon waits until truth becomes emotionally safe. He trusts systems. She trusts pressure. He wants evidence that can survive court. She wants the public to understand what is happening before more people are harmed. They need each other because neither approach is enough by itself. The shell company Javon follows the parcel number through public records. Parcel 14-B belonged to Gloria Tandy, an elderly homeowner. She had been placed into a tax delinquency process. Then CBR Holdings redeemed the property for exactly $4,875. Soon afterward, the property moved into a pooled acquisition trust connected to an affordable housing corridor, affordable housing on paper, private redevelopment in practice. The language says restoration, the paperwork says acquisition. CBR Holdings was created shortly before the transaction. Its organizer is Tremaine Bell, a compliance specialist connected to Councilman Julian Rook. The nonprofit Moving Money is tied to New Mercy Baptist Church. The board overlaps with Evelyn Cross's philanthropic foundation. The church supplies the moral image, the city supplies the authority, the developer supplies the capital, the compliance consultant makes the paperwork survive inspection. At this point, Ledger Line stops being a story about one suspicious donation and becomes a story about a machine. The book is especially strong in the way it explains complicated financial wrongdoing in human language. It does not treat fraud as one dramatic theft. It shows how fraud can be divided into respectable pieces. One organization handles donations, another clears taxes, another acquires land, another provides legal review, another manages political messaging. Each participant can claim they only handled one small part, but when Javon and Selah place those pieces together, the whole design becomes visible. Micah's hidden evidence. Micah knew people would search his apartment. He hid evidence in several places. One copy is placed inside his mother's cedar chest because he knows strangers would never reach it easily. Another is hidden in his freezer. A flash drive sits inside a church donation envelope beneath frozen food. The note reads, "If they search obvious, let them." That small moment tells readers everything about Micah. He is brave, clever, stubborn, and serious enough to anticipate his own death without losing his humor. On the drive, Javon and Selah discover folders containing parcel maps, church accounts, photographs, witness recordings, legal records, and evidence that the East Archer revitalization corridor is moving forward immediately after Micah's death. They discover that the financial close happened the day after he died. Javon says, he died and the deal breathed. That line turns timing into evidence. Micah was not merely killed because he knew something. He may have been killed because his investigation had become a delay the investors could no longer afford. The people behind the numbers One of the most important strengths of Ledgerline is that it refuses to let the investigation remain abstract. Javon begins with spreadsheets and parcel codes, but Micah understood that every number represented a person. At a public groundbreaking, a woman interrupts Councilman Rook's speech and asks, "Then why did you take my house?" The woman is Gloria Tandy. She explains that she had entered a payment plan, but her property was still reclassified and transferred. Later, she tells Javon, "Your brother told me you were the one who knew how to make paper testify. Don't come down here just to mourn him polite. Make them answer." That instruction changes Javon. He has spent much of his life believing scale matters more than individual cases. Micah believed the opposite. Micah understood that the larger system was made visible one house at a time. Javon begins meeting residents across Archer. Homes listed as vacant still have lights on. Families are still living inside them. Children are doing homework. Groceries are in the kitchen. Laundry is folded on chairs. But the administrative file tells a different story. One household receives city notices, church outreach, transition counseling, relocation information, and moving discounts before the family has agreed to leave. The paperwork begins treating removal as inevitable before the residents even understand they are under attack. This is where the central mechanism becomes clear. The machine is not simply purchasing distressed property, it is helping create distress. Purchase pressure. The people behind Archer identify residents who are already stretched thin: older homeowners, widows, families behind on taxes, people caring for relatives, homes needing repairs, residents who do not have the time or money to fight a complicated legal process. Then the pressure begins: tax notices, code violations, emergency risk classifications, appeal deadlines, church outreach, counseling language, offers of dignified transition. The same people creating the pressure then appear offering help. As Javon explains, the hand being offered is the same hand already reaching for the deed. The records even include a field called owner fatigue. Think about the cruelty inside that phrase. They are not simply measuring property conditions. They are measuring how tired people are, how close they are to surrender, how many notices they can handle, how much fear is needed before they sign. Gloria gives the process its most powerful description. They bought our tired first. That line is one of the moral centers of the novel. The developers did not only buy land, they purchased exhaustion. They bought grief, confusion, poverty, age, isolation, and administrative pressure. They made people tired enough to call surrender a choice. Javon names the system purchase pressure. The nonprofit did not save the homes, it laundered the seizure. Faith, as a cover New Mercy Baptist Church, plays a painful and complicated role in the story. The church is not presented as evil simply because it is religious. Micah grew up there, his family worshiped there, the community celebrated, mourned, ate, organized, and survived inside that building. That history is what makes the betrayal powerful. The church possesses trust. People may question a developer, they may question City Hall, but they are less likely to question a ribbon cutting after a bishop prays over it. The church's role is to turn pressure into compassion language. A resident receives a city threat first, then the church arrives second. The church offers prayer, counseling, transition support, and dignity. Micah explains it clearly. The church ain't the whole machine, it's the face. The city ain't the whole machine, it's the permit. Bell ain't the whole machine, he's the paperwork. That breakdown is important. No single institution controls the entire structure. Each provides a necessary layer. The church gives moral legitimacy. The city gives administrative power. The lawyers give legal insulation. The consultants give clean records. The investors provide money. The fixer provides fear. That is how respectable corruption survives. Nobody believes they are responsible for the entire crime because each person only touches one piece. The anniversary ledger. Micah leaves clues connected to New Mercy's church anniversary. At first, Javan and Selah believe the anniversary language may only provide a password. Then they discover something deeper. The church donor booklet contains coded transaction categories hidden beneath public sponsorship language. A code called a -87 means acquisition alignment. Publicly, the booklet celebrates donors. Privately, it routes transactions. Donation acknowledgments and acquisition records are hidden inside the same administrative system. The distinction between charity and capture disappears. The most disturbing discovery is that church communications are being synchronized with private risk management, memorial outreach, donor timing, resident pressure, family grief. All of it is treated as part of the same operational schedule. Micah's funeral is not respected as sacred. It is treated as a window in which his family and the community will be too distracted to resist. That realization drives the investigation from financial corruption into something much darker: the witnesses who become targets. Brenda Price is a former records clerk who confirms that closed tax files were reopened and changed, payment plans were revised, occupancy classifications were altered, documents were processed after midnight. She tells Javon and Sella that the workflow was designed to look ordinary enough to survive a public records request. But she is terrified. Soon after speaking with them, she retracts her statements on camera. The book does not portray that retraction as cowardice. It portrays it as survival under pressure. Another witness, former Inspector Leander Shaw, explains that occupied homes were falsely classified as emergency risks. He gives Javan a path to archived evidence and says, "Go where paper is lonely." Hours later, Shaw is dead. The official explanation calls it an accident. That pattern repeats throughout the investigation. Witnesses are followed, sources disappear, records are altered, deaths receive clean explanations. The city has learned how to translate violence into administration. Derek Sloan and the language of threat. Derek Sloan is the physical arm of the machine. He is a former detective turned private fixer. He follows Micah, he searches his apartment, he monitors witnesses, he threatens Javon's mother, he appears at the edge of events without acting like a man who needs to hide. Sloan represents the point where polite corruption stops speaking softly, but even Sloan's violence is given administrative language. Tremaine Bell refers to residents and activists as site friction. Insurance files describe intimidation and death as incident loss. Micah becomes the Mercer event. His family becomes an open volatility risk. Those phrases are chilling because they demonstrate how institutions remove human meaning from harm. A person is no longer a person. A death is no longer a death. Grief becomes a risk category. Family anger becomes volatility. Violence becomes resolution. That is why the ledger matters. It is not simply accounting, it is a moral record of how the powerful rename what they do. Rook's offer, Councilman Julian Rook does not begin by threatening Javon directly. He offers him a job, a high salary, authority, a housing allowance, a professional title overseeing redevelopment compliance. He also offers to protect Javon's mother's house and fund a memorial foundation in Micah's name. In exchange, Javon must stop treating the corruption as a scandal and help rebrand it as reform. Javan tells him, "You think everything has a purchase order." Rook does not deny it. That meeting reveals Rook's worldview. He believes cities are not absolved, they are managed. He believes profit is how movement survives. He believes some people must be displaced for progress. He does not see himself as a villain. He sees himself as the man willing to make decisions sentimental people are too weak to make. That makes him more dangerous. He is not driven by chaos, he is driven by certainty. He believes his results justify the mechanism. Javon and Salah, the emotional center of Ledger Line, belongs to Javon and Salah. Their relationship grows as the investigation forces both of them to confront how they use their strengths to protect themselves. Javon turns pain into structure. Salah turns fear into movement. He delays. She pushes. He worries that emotion will contaminate evidence. She worries that procedure will become an excuse for silence. Their arguments are not distractions from the main story. They mirror it. The city claims control is necessary. Javon has made the same argument in his personal life. He left because he feared being swallowed by everyone else's needs, but he described that choice as responsibility rather than admitting that he chose himself. Selah tells him, "You asked me to fit." That line exposes their old wound. He did not ask her to build a future with him. He asked her to enter the controlled future he had already designed. As they reconnect, Javon learns that love cannot survive if control is always the admission price. Selah learns that urgency without discipline can destroy the truth before it reaches the public. Their romance becomes a partnership because they eventually stop trying to make one another smaller. Javon does not need Selah to become cautious enough to calm him. Selah does not need Javon to become reckless enough to prove he cares. They learn to build pressure and chain together the frame. Once Javon and Selah begin uncovering the real structure, the machine turns against them. A fake consulting company is created using Javon's name. His professional credentials are attached to redevelopment documents. News stories begin calling him a disgraced consultant with undisclosed interests. The goal is clear: move him from investigator to participant, make the public wonder whether he is exposing corruption or covering his own involvement. Selah's network freezes her production resources. The company claims it needs legal clarity. In reality, it is waiting to see which side becomes safer. Selah refuses to let the platform borrow her fear and call it stewardship. She walks away and begins building an independent operation. That decision is part of the larger theme of Ledger Line. Institutions often celebrate courage only after courage becomes profitable. Before that, they call it reckless. The live trap. Javon gains access to the official back-end record connected to the fraudulent company created in his name. Inside that system, he finds the financial chain, the forged filing, the Juniper Meridian Reserve documents, the Harbor Causality Claim worksheets, Tanya Beck's reconciliation memos, the incident response allocations. The most horrifying lines include Mercer event, reserve draw approved, family volatility risk, monitoring active, field resolution retainer, D. Sloan. The machine did not only respond to Micah's death, it budgeted for it, it priced the aftermath, it created a strategy for managing the family's grief. While Javon retrieves those records, Selah goes live outside Rook's mayoral debate. She stands with Gloria and other Archer residents. The residents hold their own paperwork in front of cameras. They explain how payment plans were changed, occupied homes were marked vacant, and church outreach followed city pressure. Selah forces Rook to answer specific questions on camera. He denies any connection to Bell Strategic Compliance, Harbor Causality, and Franklin Business Services. That denial becomes useful because it can later be disproved. The investigation is no longer hidden. The residents are no longer isolated. The city has started watching. The spine. The final proof is hidden in the spine of Javon's old tax binder. Micah knew his brother better than anyone. He knew Javon trusted paper more than panic. He knew no one would open a boring tax manual except him. Inside the hollow binder spine are original documents, not copies, originals, wet signatures, New Mercy letterhead, Harbor Causality invoices, reserve notations, a private memorandum on Rook campaign letterhead. The memo states no further delays. If the Mercer boy escalates, close before weekend, and contain through church. Cross wants distance. Pike wants quiet. The corridor does not stall over one activist. There is also an audio recording. Rook says, if Micah wants to martyr himself, that's his poor judgment. But the close happens before the weekend, and his family gets prayers, not leverage. Then Bell asks about Sloan. Rook answers, then let him quiet it. That is the sentence tying political authority to the violence around Micah. The same night, Sloan and another man break into Laverne's house trying to recover the originals. The attack is violent, but it also reveals the strength of the Mercer family. Selah sprays the first intruder. Mara uses office equipment as a weapon. Aunt Denise swings a cast iron skillet. Laverne appears with her late husband's revolver and fires a warning shot into the ceiling. Even in danger, the scene carries the novel's balance of seriousness, family energy, and dark humor. The attackers escape, the evidence survives, and Javon finally stops waiting for institutions to act first. Franklin Building. The final confrontation takes place inside Franklin Business Services, Suite 1204, the same office connected to the shell companies, church print runs, forged filings, and reserve paperwork. Javon and Selah enter carrying copies, while the originals remain protected elsewhere. Inside are Julian Rook, Tremaine Bell, Tanya Beck, and Derek Sloan. Javon wants Rook to say the truth aloud. He wants him to admit that Archer was a purchase machine, that Micah's death was tolerated because the deal could not be delayed, that the church, city, and private capital worked together to move people before construction began. The room starts to fracture. Beck admits she handled the memorial language. Bell confirms Juniper Meridian's involvement. Rook argues that cities rise through timing, capital, and force. Sloan moves toward violence. And without Rook realizing it, the conversation goes live. The room is no longer private. The system that survived by controlling information suddenly loses ownership of its own words. Beck confesses that the reserved documents are stored in a black file box. Investigators enter. The box contains original reserve draw notices, claims, signature pages, church communications, and a list of residents classified according to anticipated volatility. Beside Micah's name is one word: resolved. That word captures the entire moral horror of the machine. Micah Mercer was a son, a brother, a community organizer, a man trying to protect his neighborhood. But inside the ledger, he became a problem that had been resolved. What Ledger Line is really about. Ledger Line is a political thriller, financial crime story, murder investigation, family drama, and romance. But beneath every genre layer, it is a book about language. How does power rename harm? A stolen home becomes redevelopment. Pressure becomes outreach. Removal becomes transition. A death becomes an incident. Fear becomes volatility. Exhaustion becomes owner fatigue. A community becomes an acquisition corridor. That is why the dedication says power keeps two sets of books, one for the public and one for the truth. The public book contains ribbon cuttings, prayer, restoration, mixed-use development, affordable housing, and neighborhood improvement. The private book contains parcel numbers, fatigue scores, reserve draws, threat assessments, shell companies, and the price assigned to resistance. The story is about forcing those two books into the same room, the aftermath. The exposure destroys Julian Rook's campaign. He resigns and is later indicted. Tremaine Bell cooperates. Tonya Beck testifies. Bishop Calhoun steps away from New Mercy. Evelyn Cross remains polished, distant, and under investigation. Juniper Meridian denies everything. Archer transactions are frozen. Residents begin coming forward. Selah launches her own independent production company.